advertising taglines go, the best car in the world is as punchy as it gets. And as far back as the 1920s, that was how Rolls-Royce described its cars. Quite simply, the finest motor cars on the planet.
So, that begs a juicy little question, doesn't it? This is the first ever battery-powered Rolls-Royce, the Spectre. So does that mean that the best car in the world is now electric? Now, I don't know about you, but starting a new Rolls-Royce isn't an everyday occurrence for me, so come with me and I'll show you how you get on your way. You take this big bank vault handle and give it a pull, and the door is hinged backwards. And yes, before you ask, there is still a Rolls-Royce umbrella hidden in the bodywork. No, I don't think we'll be needing that today. So, we click it back, and then you simply step aboard and feel the shag pile carpet squish underneath your feet. And then you don't do anything so vulgar as close your own door. No, you simply squeeze the brake pedal, and the car's invisible butler does it for you. Not quite ready to go yet. Firstly, you want to hit your start-stop button, which weirdly still has the word engine on it. That wakes up your fully digital dials with the power, reserve meter, your range data, and this strange speedo that doesn't have any numbers round the edge of the clock face. Then you take your quaint little column shift stalk thing, put it down into drive, and you're ready to rock and rolls.
Since you're probably wondering, this rather polarising specification is called Salamanca Blue with the Arctic White Aero two-tone. These 23-inch wheels have the optional fully polished finish, and while this car doesn't have the starlight illumination in its doors, the Sindora wooden veneer does an excellent job of making this Spectre feel like a luxury yacht that's evolved and learned to roam about on dry land.
And normally this is the part where I'd give you all of the Spectre's juicy numbers, except for the fact that Rolls-Royce finds all of that stuff far too vulgar. It doesn't like to talk about it. They don't even quote a numerical price for the Spectre. They just say it's priced between the Cullinan SUV and the Phantom. So really, you need to budget £300,000 and, well, for one that's individualised, more like 450 grand, I'm afraid. And it's the same story with the power and the performance. You have to scroll to paragraph 30 of this car's press release to discover that it has twin motors developing 576 brake horsepower, 664 pounds-feet of torque, and that despite weighing just shy of 3 tons, the Spectre will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 4.5 seconds. You get the sense that Rolls-Royce is comfortable with saying, this is a bloody fast car, dear boy, and leave it at that. Whoa.
If it's numbers that impress you, Rolls-Royce is much prouder of figures like the 0.25 CD coefficient of drag, which makes the Spectre the slipperiest Rolls-Royce ever made. That's thanks in tiny part to a redesigned Spirit of Ecstasy mascot which leans a bit more keenly into the breeze.
And because it's got those electric eel aerodynamics, despite looking like Buckingham Palace, the range is not a disaster. They claim 329 miles on a charge for this car, and it's averaging just under 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour of efficiency. And I can promise you that no EV in the world's range matters less than this one. You see, when Rolls-Royce were developing the Spectre, they said to their owners, we think it's going to have a range of about 300 miles. Is that enough for you? And the owners said, oh yes, that's fine. If I needed to go more than 300 miles in a day, I'd take my jet. So I'll tell you what, let's forget all the numbers and just get down to how this car feels. I've been trying to come up with a way to describe what this is like going down a road without just going, it is very quiet. It is very comfortable. The closest I've got so far is, if you've ever been in a tall building and you get in the express elevator to go up to the observation deck, the doors close, and then you feel that you're moving. You feel the G-force in your knees and your ankles, and maybe your ears start to pop. But your eyes, or they're just looking at a blank wall, so you have no sensation of where you are and what dimension you're moving. And the Spectre's kind of like that in the way that it plays tricks on you, but flips round, because I can see the scenery being drawn past the window. My feet are pushing pedals, my hands are turning a steering wheel, but nothing else bears any resemblance to any driving I've ever done before. It feels more like sailing on a mill pond or zero turbulence, low-level flight. It is so isolated and so unbelievably, uncannily refined, it ends up changing how you drive. See, normally I hold the steering wheel like this at 2:45 because race car, and when I'm talking to you through the camera, I'm getting animated and excited because driving a car is fun. But in this, everything comes down a few notches. You relax your hands to 20:4 on the steering wheel, and your elbows find these sumptuously upholstered armrests. Your voice drops as well. It's like being the DJ on a late night radio station. You know, hey, it's 4 a.m. You're listening to 103.7 Rolls-Royce FM, and this is the new track by Spectre. Actually, we should probably take that up a notch now, because that's getting too sexy.
Forgive me, it is easy to get carried away in a Spectre. That's what it feels like, actually, as if you're being carried away on a magic carpet. But besides the peace and the comfort, part of what makes the Spectre so relaxing is how easy it is to operate, because Rolls hasn't gone for a futuristic, ultra-minimalistic interior for its first electric car. Sure, there is a touchscreen, but it's just simplified BMW iDrive. The heater is worked by swiveling discs, there's beautifully damped twiddly knobs for the fan speed and the volume, and you even get buttons for heating, cooling and massaging your bum.
I mean, I was cynical before I drove this car. I thought, oh no, what if going electric has cheapened the Rolls-Royce experience? What if now I've no longer got 12 cylinders bouncing up and down in front of me in perfect harmony? This is somehow a more sterile, characterless, generic kind of car that would be a disaster for a roller. But you know what? I knew electric would suit Rolls-Royce, but I think they've done the impossible here. I think electric, more than any other car, has made Rolls-Royce better. So let's come back to my big question then. Best car in the world? I mean, that is always a tricky one, isn't it? Because depending on your frame of reference, a Caterham is the best car in the world, or a Ford Mustang, or a Land Rover Defender, or a Toyota Hilux. It completely depends how you like to use your car, where you live, and what you were brought up on, I guess. But so far as a luxury car goes, the Spectre has the most comfortable seat I've ever sat on, not just in cars, I mean in my entire life. It is built of exquisite materials with fabulous attention to detail and build quality. This is the quietest car I've ever been in. It's the second best riding car I've ever driven after a Citroën DS. And it just has this overall feeling of absolute quality. I thought it would be the little touches, the little attention to detail, like lowering the spirit of ecstasy so she makes a smaller hole in the air, that I'd really enjoy about being in here. But actually, it's just the way everything comes together. And when you think about electric luxury cars, I'm sorry, but the gap between this and a Mercedes EQS is not even worth talking about. Thinking of other electric stuff, I mean, yes, there'll be electric Bentleys to come and Maybach have some catching up to do, but for now, I think the Spectre is the king.
A bit more housekeeping then, since you're probably now quite wanting to own a Spectre. Under the bonnet you don't get a frunk, but at least the boot floor contains a hidden cellar for your charging cable. The boot is a bit narrower than you might expect, but it can still take a couple of suitcases, and inside the cabin it's a proper four-seater with room for adults to lounge around in the back. They even get a pretty good view out. Problems? Well, the electrically motorised doors don't quite have enough grunts to close when you're parked on a slope, and the enormous wheels do clunk a bit at very low speed before the suspension witchcraft starts to happen. It's also annoyingly easy to confuse the gear shift column, and the wiper stalk if you're too common to drive a Rolls-Royce very often. And I am. Worst of all, there's now a 2-year waiting list to buy a Spectre. So the Spectre isn't quite perfect, but that doesn't stop it from being utterly, head-meltingly glorious. No other EV in the world has quite so much sense of occasion.
That's the Spectre then, literally the Rolls-Royce of EVs. You know, it's always tempting when a potentially controversial new car comes out to think, what would the company founders have made of it if they were still alive? You know, would Enzo rate a pura sangue? What would Ferruccio reckon to an Urus? I wasn't sure about the Spectre, but after a couple of days in it, I reckon that Charles Rolls and Henry Royce would adore that car, and they'd be very glad that their company is in safe hands as well, because while a lot of car companies are wrestling with how to transplant their values into a battery-powered future, well, I think an electric future is going to suit Rolls-Royce very well indeed.